This is where our story begins. For over 400 years, innovation has been at the heart of everything we do. But the world is changing fast, and how we learn is changing too. So we never rest, never stand still. And we wouldn't be who we are today without our extraordinary people. Using our resources wisely means we can invest in the future of education and research. Working without boundaries in over 150 countries across the world.
I'm based in the New York office. I work with colleagues from all over the world, and it feels great to be part of a truly global team. It's amazing to know the projects I've worked on are helping people in Brazil, Mexico, China, South Africa, Spain, all over the world learn new skills and achieve their goals.
Technology is changing the way people learn, and we are leading the way by creating the products, innovative services and solutions that will respond to the real needs of teachers and learners in the 21st century.
Every day I make decisions to shape and design a product. These decisions are based on a lot of research and feedback. This helps us to design the best product we can for our customers around the world.
Understanding and supporting customers, wherever they are, is at the center of everything we do. Working together, we are able to try out new ideas that will make a real difference.
Unlocking people's potential with the best learning and research solutions. Inspiring people all over the world to expand their horizons and achieve their goals. So join us on our journey, and together we can achieve our vision of a world of learning and research inspired by Cambridge.
Thank you very much. I just thought of launching this video in front of esteemed audience here. This is the first time we're launching this video, and I heard a lot about the value creation in the last session. A lot of value which needs to be created within the spectrum of education. First time we tried actually launching this video here, and I think I just want to hear from the audience, is there a value in the video which you saw? Is it engaging? Is it something, are you getting, or is there a message which is going out of the video? The first time ever anywhere in the world, Cambridge University Press has launched this. Parallel to this, we're doing the same in Frankfurt today. The same launch is happening in Frankfurt. But see the center where India in this video is, and how exactly are we putting focus in terms of whole geography, which is really changing by the day. With this, what I really wanted to start the session with, while I had a different program to start the session with, but I wanted to go back to the question which Kamal asked in the last session, saying that there is a brick wall, and then there is a Edtech.Now, and then there is a online now. Are we ready for online now? Historically, we've been very good saying that, we are a 1.2 billion population, 500 million plus under 30 age, and we have a huge market. We're going to create disruption. We will innovate. And I think that's how actually we engaged the whole audience over the time. Today is the time for India. There are realistic conversation happening. There are more engaging conversation happening in terms of what is that real value. When you're talking about spectrum of education from a K to test prep to 12 to higher education to a research where you go, how exactly the technology would actually help you in terms of engaging the whole spectrum. And that's the question which we need to actually ask ourselves. You could create value in K through 12, K through 8, by doing video gamification? Can you create value in the moment the kid goes and start taking JE or the medical by doing the same thing? Can you create value when he goes from that to IIT where he has to do a real research by doing the same? Or can you create the value when you really want him to become a Rhodes Scholar? By the way, day for yesterday, I was in front of Rhodes Scholar building, and I was asking myself question that, and I went through the students really gone from India to the Rhodes Scholar. And the concentration of those Rhodes Scholar was limited to few institutions in India, namely 2 or 3. And I was asking myself question, none of these institutions I have gone, and I have set of friends across different geography, none of them have gone through these colleges. Are we not really made for those Rhodes Scholarship? So I think the question which we need to really ask ourselves that within the spectrum of that whole education, what is the technology, what is the online, what's the brick mortar, what's the blend are we going to use in terms of getting the maximum value? And I like that value. If you draw the circle of the value, it looks like there is a center of that value is really, we learn from the content, right? We learn from something which is given to us, a book or an online content or some paper or some teacher gives us the content. And then it becomes an instructor, whether it's instructor, online instructor, or instructor, a teacher, or instructor in terms of, from any geography coming and actually working with you. And then it really lifts in terms of really taking the third layer, that how do you do a collaboration between these two, the content and the teacher, to create the outcome out of the whole session which you do. So therefore, it is important for us to see that where exactly that value needs to be created. Is the value needs to be created within the content? Is the value needs to be created within the instruction, which is the teacher? We talked about, everybody talked about teacher, and I don't see any in the market today. I see a very minimal, real, large technology intervention to actually get the teacher lifting up in terms of quality. Very little. We have technology and pedagogy improvement which is happening, and therefore we're actually doing a learning objects, video, assessment, formative, summative, everything there in the content side. And then we've actually looked at technology, that how exactly can it create. And then there are some bit of data which we look at in terms of how exactly can we see people are engaged or not engaged. Where is that instruction? Where is that collaboration between the teacher and the students, and therefore improving the content? So that's the kind of question which we need to ask ourselves, that when we want to create value, we will have to answer those questions. We have an issue in India today in terms of capacity. The teachers not, there is a dysfunctional classroom we talked about, right? We have 40 students in the classroom. A teacher who actually missed every other profession to join as a teacher, and then he actually aspires to be in that place, but then the existing setup does not allow them to kind of create value which he or she wants to create value. Now, how would ever be value created, whether would you have an adaptive session or whether would you have a one-on-one session where somebody who's engaging with that kid or in any spectrum of our intervention is really not been empowered or not been engaged or not been given certain value to themselves to uplift their skill. So that's the question which we need to ask, that how do we really, do we need to kind of look ourselves in the mirror and say, let's answer those questions, then we would really want to build the scale value and therefore create something which is really not only innovation, and my friend here was talking about innovation but no disruption. Disruption but no scale. Only 2 days back I was with the CEO of Chegg. Chegg is a company, California-based company, and they're doing very well. They have a model of a renting textbook, which is a disruption for us. They can take our textbook and put it on rent, which is really, so I would get, rather than getting a money value relation of one book, I would actually take a rental value out of that book. So, and I asked him a question that you were talking about disruption, and you're talking about, disruptor being disrupted by some other disruptor. Right? So, and therefore a challenge for you, that how do you continue to innovate yourself? And the answer which he gave is that if I do not create value in that rental textbook system, and if I do not create value in terms of scaling myself and therefore creating modes, I will not exist tomorrow. It doesn't matter I'm a listed company back in US, but I will not exist tomorrow if I don't do it. Now, so if we are talking about scale of India and therefore creating a value, we will have to answer that value question very deeply and therefore see that there is a sustainable story are we building, or we're building a story which is just another technology or just another online or just another intervention of a developing pedagogy or blend of a pedagogy and technology. I'm going to flip the discussion and take you back to some of the macro challenges which is really happening at this point in time as we are here in India. You look at economies such as US and Eurozone is really not expanding because of the whole monetary policy and the interest rate going down. It's really developing very slowly right now, and that's throwing a lot of challenge to the world economy. China's imports gone down by 20%, and that's a macro, right? BRIC country, which is one of them was India, was supposed to be expanding. You have challenge in Brazil, you have challenge in Russia, you have challenge in China. The only country which is looking positive today is India, and we're all sitting as part of creating that value in that country. We've done value creation in the past which did not help us. Here is a time for us to create something as a value and change the whole value proposition to back in India and say that is there a product which we are creating which is disrupting the market outside in terms of whole value proposition. So I would relate that to as a macro. Also, some of the other reflection I would like to give you is that if you see a largest company by market capitalization today, 20 largest company by market capitalization, it did not exist 20 years back. What does it tell us? It tells us that change, innovation, disruption is happening by the day. And therefore, how would we do all of this, what we're talking about in terms of, continue to come back to that same question, that what's there which we need to do to ensure that whole, there is a real consumer, real learner, real teacher who gets benefited from what we do as with the intervention of technology. What does it really mean for all of us? And I've tried actually, and I'm taking a bit of a courage to put together certain model. It is not anybody's model. It is just the thinking which I was doing when I was sitting here listening to the speakers. And I'm talking about 4C model, right? And it's just it's not one of those Philip Kotler model. It's just a 4C model, which talks about one is to create capacity. And when you talk about creating capacity, is the real capacity in terms of your bandwidth, in terms of your internet penetration, in terms of a real capacity of teachers. So how would you create capacity? And one of the questions which we need to do is that anything which we're doing is helping creating capacity. So that's the first C. Second, we have to challenge the current status quo as to how exactly the teaching learning process is happening. How is that the whole research is happening? Today in India, there's only one institute which comes in ranking. And we take pride in terms of working with them. That's based in Bangalore, Indian Institute of Science, and that's the only institute which comes in ranking. We can be arrogant and say that, no, we don't participate, therefore we don't come in ranking. But the reality today is, when they look at India, they see only one institute which is also ranked 250th. Is there a status quo which we are challenging and say, no, hang on. There are values in IITs, there are values in various other part of the institution, and how do we actually start building up to see that the world starts seeing as a real value creation? That's the second, which is to question the, challenging the status. The third is connecting and collaborating. While you're competing, but you're connecting and collaborating, and therefore creating a larger value. And one of the examples clearly here is perhaps, what is Cambridge University Press has to do with the WizIQ? I mean, it's besides the point, Harman is a good friend, but where is Cambridge University Press and what is it WizIQ, and how is that we can challenge and create a value for ourselves? But if I actually roll it back, perhaps my online courses, and one of our customer here, esteemed customer, Laureate, uses a very evolved program called Touchstone worldwide. Why is that Touchstone cannot really be run on a WizIQ platform, and I can take that platform to anywhere and everywhere in India, and actually we can co-create and co-collaborate and create a real value for somebody who wants to learn English based on those real 4 skills. So those, how do you do a compensatory innovation where everybody collaborate and create to get the scale? Scale is huge. we continue to see ourselves in one silo and say, no, I'm going to create this value in this silo. I'm going to create value in this silo, and therefore there is an opportunity of collaboration we lose. Here in this audience, I would actually challenge all of you that feel free, let's have a conversation, let's talk about it, that how can we collaborate and get the scale of 500 million kids who are going to be there in the workforce, somebody who's saying that the population dividend can actually start glaring at us, and it can really be creating problem for us. So how can we not be responsible and create and collaborate that value? That's the third thing. And the last fourth thing, which I'm going to close this model with, is the whole consistency in terms of quality. Let's face it, quality has been an issue. Whether we talk about, we have example of Infosys, TCS, and other service providers consistently delivering quality across but in the real product sense, have we really created any quality? Do we know any product which has really come out? We have people who've gone outside and created product, and we have examples here. But is there a product which we can actually take fancy and that we have created? This is what we have. We've had historically a lot of story which we actually talk about in terms of our invention of zero being here and everything we have done it here. What is it which we are doing today as part of the whole education, large education, supplier education, test prep education, K through 12 education, university? What's the value which we're creating? Only yesterday I was reading Economist and I saw two articles which was very encouraging. In fact, I saw an article talking about some of the Indian institutions actually going outside in terms of creating universities. And we're taking a lead role there, that if it doesn't happen in UK, we go and get the institution set up in Dubai. And these institutions are actually creating value in terms of saying that I can be present there and I would have enough and more capacity to kind of cater to that segment where I am. So I think that's the kind of thinking that how do you actually take this whole consistent approach in terms of creating quality. That's the last piece. The quick reflections of the data. 7.2 billion population, about 3.27 billion people already have internet of a various bandwidth size. By 2090, they're saying that the average consumption is actually going from a 20.3 Mbps to a 45.5 Mbps, which essentially mean all your video, etc., which you stream in the learning process is going to become easier and easier. And I think through the new government, we hear Digital India ensuring that all campuses is going to happen. So that's going to be helping you creating value, right? So what does it all mean from a Cambridge University Press? So what I really wanted to quickly do is to kind of play a small PPT, quick three-page PPT, which is just for you to go through that. What is it really from a Cambridge University Press's perspective, and how is that important for us to see that is there a value we can actually create together with what we have done historically? Yeah. So these are researches which you have seen. So you see some of the name which is very familiar to you. William Harvey, so whole blood circulation. You see some of the name was not actually mentioned here. It's not an exhaustive list, but these are the ones who some of those learned people have gone to the university and created a value which actually has resulted in terms of them getting Nobel Prizes at the various part of time. This was real value. This was not about UK. This was not about Cambridge. This was a real value to solve certain problem. This is the list which I've really put together. You have two of the Indians there listed in terms of winning various Nobel Prizes. One can always argue that is there the best place academician needs to go, or is there the best place a scholar needs to go? But the Field Marshal and Nobel are the two ones all academicians actually try to go. Only one college of Cambridge, and that's where Stephen Hawking come from, has created 49 Nobel laureates, which is a cumulative France Nobel laureates created. So that's a value. I'm not saying that's going to happen overnight here, but is there a way we can see that why is this university number one today in the world, and what is it which they're doing to create value? So I think it really, in terms of learning and research at the core, and I think I will go back to the same framework as to when you talk about instruction, when you talk about teacher, when you talk about content, when you talk about pedagogy, when you talk about technology. And I had a beautiful example given by my friend Jonathan here, that take a model of homeschooling in US. It's creating value. It's happening online, right? There are version of that has been followed, but it's creating value. There are outcome which is coming there. It's online, and there's a real, kind of intervention of both learning, teaching happening. So there is a value which has been created there. The same list of all people here. So I think what we are actually talking about is in terms of how do we actually leverage the whole technology, digital spread which we have within the spread of our spectrum to get the best outcome. And I think what I've tried actually doing is to kind of point some of those, name some of them here. But I'm happy to have conversation. I'm happy to have discussion with you. I think the point which we need to, all of us need to kind of agree on, that if you really have to do anything which can actually, and content is a broad-based, content is not content as that, book and the content. Content could really mean the assessment, content could mean the pedagogy, learning objects, content could mean the instruction materials which we're doing. Unless we do not take a real intervention in that space, we can continue to have a technology platform. We would have a very little disruption, and we will have an innovation. We will have a very little disruption, and therefore we will have a very little scale, and it will create a challenge on the unit economics which we talked about in terms of whether it's sustainable or not. And if it is not sustainable, you will not make a story of 600 years, which this press is now creating again and again and again and again as a value. It is not only British, it is 600 years of Cambridge University Press creating these content, pedagogy, technology, value again and again. And I was there in Chadwick's room where he invented Neutron. And I think it looked like the place where actually people can create a value. Is there a way that we can make our classrooms such as that, and then therefore create a value? It's something which we should be doing incrementally. With that, I will end the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jha. Would you like to take a few questions from the audience, just in case we have any? Ladies and gentlemen, any questions? Yes. So I'm going to give the opportunity to the lady who just rose her hand, right in the center there. Yep. Yeah, thank you. Hello.
Hello. Hi. I'm from an education technology company called EduVision. I loved what you said. I have a thought to give to you, and I want to know what your take on this is. You spoke about content being king. We know what Cambridge does, a lot of books. What you spoke about checks, doing renting. We are also hearing that the physical books are going to be phased out from what the data was given by Parthenon in the next 5 years. So what's your take on this? How's Cambridge going about it?
I think the way we look at it is the print or the digital as being the medium, right? So we don't see that as a changing education landscape. I'm sure it is a challenge for the printing guys, but our take on it is that in the last few years of the quarter, we have seen an increasing trend of paper consumption, at least in India. And I don't see, at least for next 3 to 4 years, there's going to be there is an increasing trend which we have seen in the last 2 years. And I think there is a blend which we see. And interestingly, I wanted to touch upon this. When we talk about India, we love the story of leapfrogging. We've done only leapfrog, which is a GSM technology when we launched the Tech Telecom. Are we going to leapfrog from a paper to digital? Very little chance. You still require paper, you still require blend, and require it for some time. Not only for another year or 2 years, I think it will require for the next 5 years. The paper, the book will be there, but there will be a compelling blend in terms of getting a formative, summative, other testing, and other objects which you could actually create value for the students' learning cycle.
Thank you.
Did it answer the question?
Yeah, no, I had a question. I mean, clearly Cambridge is the envy of the world, and you showed a lot of pictures and a lot of these Nobel Prize winners. Yeah. And in every picture, the interesting thing was, other than the photo of Nobel Prize winners, was a picture of the campus. Yeah. Very fancy campus, very expensive campus. Do you foresee that 50 years from now, there could be Nobel Prize winners who actually have come not from campuses, but the research is done outside of campus in industries, because most of those Nobel Prize work was done outside of Cambridge, not inside the Cambridge. So can you perceive that without having such fancy campuses, the world can create Nobel Prize winners?
Yeah, I think, yeah, so the two part of the question, whether the campus and the whole university learning actually generates that kind of outcome, or does it really a real work outside campus within the campus? Does that, is that a question which you asked?
Yes.
I think it's not a reflection of a campus, and I would take a view that the research which is part of this campus and which is at the core of a campus as a value, as a culture evolved over the years, 600 years. Now, one can take a look that it's an university and say that, you know, it's a campus, beautiful, everything is right, and then therefore take a position that, you know, you being arrogant and you actually saying the campus can really be generating all these Nobel laureates. But if we can take that value and put that value in any other place, right? We have an intention of actually doing some work in Hyderabad now. If we do take same value and put it anywhere in India and actually sustain that value, I'm sure we can create Nobel laureates here. And you saw some of them really did not only do education in Cambridge University, they were passed out from Jadavpur University, and therefore they went there for some courses and did that. That value creation journey, we will have to be honest and look at ourselves in the mirror and say, I want to work hard to create that in any of the institution here. And why is that we cannot really create that over here? I'm very sure over the next 20, 30 years, if the story really remains the same and I've continued to disrupt, innovate, and do things which is cutting edge, this can be created any part of the world, not, let alone only India. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, thank you.
Hello. Good morning. Actually, I see that most of you are from industry, and I see only one other professor that I know here. I've been a professor for last 8 years in several institutions in India, and I was in US for a considerable period of time in various fields. But my observation, just actually I see Mr. Dham has asked a question. I think the answer lies, for example, if you see Mr. Babinav Bindra, he got the first gold medal for India in individual competition, and that did not happen for 50 years or so of India's independence, even through all this infrastructure. So I think probably that can happen. And then coming back to your value, I think that is the crux of the problem in Indian education system, and especially in private education. And what you see in brick and mortar institutions is that the faculty and the student engagement, especially student engagement, the faculty engagement, that is a real problem. And that I see is the topic of discussion in the previous panel. But what I wanted to mention is that in systems where people rely or the systems recognize only piece of paper with a stamp, that means the validity of the content that is learned, that is very important. So what is this industry doing in terms of having the universities or the system to recognize what is the extent of learning that has actually occurred during this process of online process, whether it is a supplementary model or a supplanting model for the regular process of classroom interaction. So that I think is a challenge, where you have to seek to validate the extent of learning that has occurred through all these processes. And that validation will come through the university system or through the regulatory system. So that is one thing that I see missing.
Just to add to your point, I think that incrementally government is talking in terms of actually saying that is there a way that we can put credit to that course? Is there a way that I can see that outcome of that course? And I think we hear that incrementally when we interact with some of those.
In the Western system, that is already happening. They are looking at MOOCs probably as a way of an admission criteria, as one of the many admissions criteria, whether at UG level or PG level, that a person that has interacted through this self-learning process, through online learning, whether that could be given as a credit for weightage, basically.
Sure. I think we need to build the advocacy. We need to build a compelling story ourselves to see whether there is an outcome. And if there is an outcome, I'm sure government should be very eager to kind of really take that as a part of the university curriculum and say that whatever medium it is, let's put the credit to that. And I think the credit is an important word. Because when I visited last time, a friend of mine, a classmate of mine was a secretary of higher education. And they themselves have created 6,500 objects working along with various part of the IITs and the regional IIT campuses to kind of really have these MOOCs. And these are already there. So I think how do you give credit to some of these courses is important.
That is credit, and the other aspect is the measurement of actual learning
Sure.
that has taken place. These are the two challenges I
Sure,
see.
sure.
And actually, I didn't introduce myself. My name is YVS Kumar. I was with Ansal University and Sharda University earlier. Thank you much.
Sure.
So last question, because we're getting into lunch now, and so
think,
I'd request you to keep it pointed, please. Thanks.
I think a lot of the talk about the online curriculum is about learning the skills, but a lot of the Cambridge University press is about the concepts and getting into deeper into the knowledge. I think we being such a large country, we need probably skill quite a bit, but the concepts are possibly getting little diluted because large number of people don't get into that. That is where Cambridge University Press can help.
Sure.
Do you see a convergence, any approach anyone is doing in converging the two things? I think we need concept and skills. But
Sure.
there is a clear diminishing of concepts. That is the reason we don't have Nobel laureates, we don't have universities which are really well listed. So do you see any
Sure.
kind of convergence happening between the two?
So I tried answering that question during my presentation. If you see the technology, if you see pedagogy, and if you see instruction and the concept framework, I cannot imagine that any of these can work independent. It will be dysfunctional if we work independent. So how do you create that concept framework and get the, indigest the whole, pedagogy or a content and then become a part of the technology is something which is going to create a larger object which has a sustainable value. In absence of that, we can continue to create this, none of them would have a value. And I think today some of our panelists were talking about that how exactly can we work on this to continue to create the value. And I think one of the things which we need to do, and I think it's important for us to take away from this meeting, and that's my view, is that to open ourselves to people, to open. Why I see that Valley or California startups do well, because they continue to openly discuss what their model is and see how can we leverage from any other, similar kind of adjacent intervention. So I think framework is very important, as you rightly put it, but it needs to work together.